Okay, so I'm just going to be going over what I implemented for persistence and how we may be utilizing it for the project. I think this is how we're going to be able to do it. And essentially, it's just going to be, like, once again, kind of similar to the HTTP wrappings where we just, a few lines of code should make the whole thing work, but I'm just going to explain how it's working, and also I will, in this video, explain how to utilize a REST client with VSCode, and that makes things just an absolute shit ton easier. So I'm doing this on my local. I'll do that first, and then I'll show you how to do it on your VLab as well. So that's local. This here, let me just get my screen back up. This here is our data. I'm just going to see if I can find a way just to bring this, keep this forward. So you can just have a look at me here. So this is basically what we have here. This is what's called an HTTP client. It's an extension for VS Code essentially, and I'm just going to drag this over a bit more, where you can test HTTP requests in your own local server. And we'll get to that in a moment. But if you guys have gone over the persistence lecture now, I haven't done the hashing yet, but I will do that as well because it's kind of linked, so I think I should be able to get it done pretty easily. But basically, the only thing that I've done is change the data store. And I'll explain exactly how it works, at least how I think it works. I'm not quite sure exactly how it works. And for the moment, we'll be using the JSON IO, and we won't be using pickling until we need to deal with objects, which we may need to do, but I don't think we're going to do for this iteration unless we really get ahead of things. So this is basically how we're going to do it. So this is data as we have it. This is still the same initial object. And I'll explain, I think, I just had a bit of an epiphany of how that works. And I've changed the class basically now and the methods within the class to act on it. But first, let's just sort of go over what's now in our back end. So I don't really need that. We'll keep that second terminal just for later. So this is an HTTP file, basically. And that's going to run in VS Code and do bits and bobs. And that's kind of how that works. And I'll do a separate video for that in just a second. But for the moment, this is more just for how the persistence works. So as you can see here, I've established the database.json file. That's just from me testing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that file because it's just JSON. It's just it's just a text basically sort of thing. So now we don't have that there. And basically, if you go over the persistence lectures, what we're basically doing is we're going to get the data. Before we were just sending it back to this data store and saving it in the initial object. And this is what this sort of thing is here. So I don't have the original, but forget about this whole thing here for a second. Basically, when you get it, it's just getting this self.store, and self.store is the initial object. And otherwise, we would have been getting this, which is self.store to set the data. So it's going to be setting that initial object to what you've passed back. So every time we go through, let's say I've got like auth here, we get store equals data store.get. So we're going to get the store. We're going to do all our actions. Actually, that's login. But if you look at register, it's the same thing. You get the store, and then you register the user in store. So store of users, we append the user, and then here, this is actually, we didn't really know how it worked for iteration 1, but now it kind of makes sense how it works for iteration 2, is we've got these things, and we're going to set the store for that. So at the end of the iteration, it's going to be set, and it appends to it. But the problem is that it only works in memory. As soon as you stop the server, everything is deleted, and you have to start again. But with one change in the object methods, I think I've managed to fix that, basically. So yeah, so basically that's how it works in there, is that you have a change to the object and the way the methods work, and it goes through there. So we have it working exactly the same. So first things first, to get self, first things first, yeah, it sets the self.store to the initial object. So this is basically initially what we're going to be setting up. This is what's going to be there before we put any data into it. These are a number of what looks quite scary commands, but I'll explain them all here, and I might just write comments for them. So first things here, we're importing OS. It's an inbuilt module. We're allowed to use it. Just in OS and JSON now here, and this is getting what's called current working directory, and that's basically your local folder. And the reason I wrote it like this was I couldn't find it online, but I figured no matter where you get push or pull or whatever it goes to, whatever directory it gets to, it'll get you that current file that the server is going to be running from. And then from there, we're going to add this path, because the path just gets your directory, and then it's going to get this database.json. And it's not going to be database.json. It won't be pulling from SRC. It will be in the project backend. So not in tests or SRC. It'll be in that one, because that's where server's running from as well. I'm pretty sure, but we will have to test for that. And then this is basically, it's checking if in this path there's a file that's called this, basically. So it goes through your working directory, and it checks, all right, is this path, does this file exist? And if that's the case, I don't know what I did there. If that's the case, then we're going to open it. Otherwise, so we're going to open our data. So we're saying, look, in the past, we've run the server, we've added some data to it, and now we're going to next time we open the server, we're going to open it up, and then we're going to append to that existing data, rather than what we were doing before, which was just create new, and you'd have to log in and register every single time. So with this in mind, now this will return that, and this is just using the same stuff with open database.json. So this is basically passing this out as a file, as an object, and this is with read permissions only. So it can only read it, it can't write to it, and it's going to return the loading of this file, basically. So this will get self is now going to return this. So when something calls get, let's say in auth, right? Here, store equals data store get. So get is going to be returning something, which will be the saved data going into store. Now let's just go back into that. Else, so if there isn't anything there, it will return self.store. Now this is my current solution. However, I'm not sure if we might need to do some more exemption handling for this. The reason why I wrote this was originally, if you just write this straight up, if there isn't a data store or database anything around, you'll just get an error straight away. So I don't know if we have to do a try except block, but the problem is I don't want exceptions. There's only two cases. Either there's data or there's no data. And if there's no data, we don't want an exemption. We just want to create a new one. So I think this works. Maybe it's elegant. I don't know. So that's the get method, and this is how we're changing that method. For set, it's the same sort of thing. This I didn't write this. This is already here. Set store. So this is the same thing. So this first gets the store. So the store's been, now let's say you've appended something in auth, right? So you've appended this to store. Here, store the user, blah, 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 and then we're going to set store to the data store. But now what we're actually going to do is we're going to open this in the JSON. So it's been set, and now we're going to setting this in here too. So in fact, I could probably put in self it should be the same thing. It works. Anyway, so I will comment some more on this stuff later on to explain it, but let's see how it works in practice. So, right. So basically, this is working, this response area is working as an HTTP client, but within VS Code. And now we could actually do this on a plugin if this is a bit too complicated. This is just a lot easier because you can pre-write all your requests. So I've done this. We will not push this to GitLab, but basically it lets you set all your different requests. So first things first, I want to do a post request to this port auth register. And I've changed the port number because we keep some other students on our port now, so we have to change that here. And it's the same thing as before. So it's going to be put in all this information register, put in all this information register, blah, 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 blah. And the way you do it is you just press this button. So it's preloaded every single time. So first, let's start by running the server. Keep doing this. src.server. All right. So that's going to run, and now it should be good to go on this URL here. Let's send a request to register. So this will be the first registrar. So you should get auth user ID number 1, right? And let's register another person. We have auth user ID number 2. And now let's make a, maybe we'll make a channel. So channels create. So this is another post method. And this is with auth user number 1. Right, okay, so that's exactly the same as before, how we had it wrapped. But now, let's just say the power goes out or whatever. Let's close the server. And before, it would have refreshed because everything's in memory. But let's just see if it actually worked. Let's start the server again. Okay, server's working. And how about let's do a GET request to get channel details of what an auth user is in. Now before, that wouldn't have worked because basically, and between each request you have to put these 3 hashes. I don't quite know why. Before it wouldn't have happened because it's like, okay, it's broken. Let's now do it all over again. We have to log in and register. So let's just have a look at channel details. Actually, I'm just going to stop the server again because I just want to check in channels exactly how that works. So code channel.py. In here, so let's have a look at channel details. So this allows you to view the details of a channel they belong to. So we need an auth user ID and a channel ID. So from our last set of setups, we should have had, if you look at what I put in here, I've registered myself and Krusty the Clown, and I have set up Tofu School. So my channel details should be Tofu School, let's say, right? Because I like Tofu. So let's just go back into our main one, run the server, and this one here, so this is going to go into channel details. And this is the same thing as before. You put in the string key pairs in as this, so it's question mark, and then your first key value pair, and this one, so it takes an auth user ID and also a channel ID. So you need to put in channel ID is equal to 1, is equal to 1, if that's the channel that you want. In this case, that is what we want. So if it's successful, it should work. And here we are. Look, so this is giving me the channel details of Tofu School. And this is the owner members, it's me, because I was the one who set it up. And these are all the members too. So that's a great sign. Because before the server would just reload and not work. So now let's try and register some more people. Auth user 3, yep. Bully Maguire, that's the original Spider-Man. Let's create another channel, Spider-Man School, and maybe Cake School. And let's do this again, except this time I want to do auth user ID 4, because that's Spider-Man, and channel ID 2. Oh yeah, I always forget. Put these through here, send request, boom, Spider-Man school. How good is that? We close it and did some more stuff, it'll keep building the server up that way. And that's how we did the persistence. Well, that's how I've done the persistence. And this is a bit confusing with VS Code, but you can do exactly the same thing now in your VLab, or just like in any browser. So let's do that quickly. So let's just go into Tiger, connect. Oh, it's so laggy. That's why I hate doing it on VLab, because it's just so slow. You can do this in gedit even. So let's open up our terminal. It's not desktop. And let's go into the manage project. Backend. Here we are. And you can see the database is now in there too, because I'd SSH'd into there. Now this is still just in my Git repository, it won't be in yours. But that's good. So that means I can do this in my SSH, and then it'll also be in VLab or whatever too. So let's, we can try exactly the same thing here. -3-m. I think I remember the port number. -3-m src.server. Okay, the server's running, which is good. So I've chosen this port number 41968. You guys can maybe have a guess of exactly what that might mean. I think you should be able to get. And I've set up a client, HTML client, an HTTP client in Chromium. I always does this. So just as an app, the advanced REST client, that's just what Hayden uses. And for some reason, this is the reason why I don't often do it in VLab, because it doesn't seem to work. Here we are, okay. So, same thing, 41968. Let's just try and get channel details of auth user ID 1 and channel ID 1. That's a get method. Let's see if this works. Yeah, it works. Sweet. All right. So that's basically the persistence, and that's how you can do it even within gedit. And yeah, so you can also I'd highly recommend setting up the HTTP requests things in VS Code. If you want, I can make another video on exactly how to do that. But that's basically how the persistence works, is we're utilizing the object methods. So what that means is that we can now utilize that. But we are not to post the database to GitLab repo, because the idea is that the demonstrator will pull it and they'll run it in their local working directory, and our program will instead create a new database for them when they start it. And I assume that's how it will work. Yeah, all right, so that is all for persistence. And I will push that as soon as I can get a little bit more functionality.